Welcome, this is the Commissioner Corner Podcast. Today is March 15th, and this is episode number 35. As always, we are presented by web3ks.com. Check out web3ks.com for your webpage, social media, and all your other graphic needs for a very affordable price. This is Week 7 in NBL Season 30, and tonight's episode is all about the most important position on the field, and that is the quarterbacks. We're going to be taking a look at the Rams' stellar rookie quarterback, A.J. Baggs, how the Falcons quarterback Brody Denton is skipping the sophomore slump, and we're going to ask a difficult question. Is it time for Aaron Rodgers to walk away from the NBL? My co-host tonight, Bomber, is going to have some pretty good insight on that topic. So, Bomber, how are you doing tonight? Ready for the show?
Yeah, I'm here, so I feel like I'm ready. We got a lot
Always.
of things. We got a lot of things we're going to be talking about today. Quarterback is an important position.
Yes.
And that is something that you need. That's the focal point of your franchise. That's what separates the good teams from the great teams and the good teams from the average teams and so forth and so on. So I'm really excited to talk some decline of Aaron Rodgers talk tonight because, I mean, obviously, that's where we're all going in unison. I think even Hop can agree. Aaron Rodgers, something is wrong, something is missing. I feel like there's an injury going on here that he's not talking about, that he's playing through because, man, I haven't seen him look this bad. And he actually is coming off a pretty good season. We'll talk about that shortly, but to sum up your original question, I'm doing pretty well. Excited to be here March 15th. It's a Thursday. March Madness just kicked off, or should I say tipped off. So there's a lot of things going on right now to be excited about. We've donated some money to the Wounded Warriors project, so that's some great stuff. I think about $700 and a little bit more, as they do have a couple squares out there that they can win on. But I'm doing good, Lip. How are you?
I'm good. As you just said, March Madness tipped off. I'm not a huge basketball guy, but I do enjoy college basketball. So this is.
Wait, you're not a huge basketball guy? I thought you were a big time Phoenix Suns fan. Was I wrong about that?
Well, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah,
Suns, Lip, here we go. I want you to name 3 players that played on the Phoenix Suns at any point in their career. Just give me 3 players. Okay. Let's go right now before we start. Go. NBA talk. Go.
The only one I think I know is, didn't Steve Nash play?
Yeah, Steve Nash, that's one. Okay, Steve Nash, that's one. All right.
Nah.
Hop's in there. Hop. Grow up. Let him answer.
Tyson Chandler's another name that I know.
Oh, he's looking online. No way. How do you know he plays on them?
That's one name. All right. That's one name.
What other Phoenix Sun? I mean, this is
from basketball.
If you say somebody else, there's a
real
obvious one.
No, I do actually know this one. Jared Dudley.
Ah, that is a heck of a list.
I remember that.
Jared Dudley.
I remember that from what was that game? 2K14 that I played like in 2016.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And somehow he ended up on my team, so I do remember that name, but. So,
Homer's in the chat saying Nash, Barkley, and Danny Ainge. That's a good one. I would say Kevin Johnson. Are we going to go top 3? Man, they had some good ones. Even Tom Chambers was kind of nice on that squad. But Charles Barkley's the GOAT. And then Kevin Johnson. Then you could probably argue the third one. But Kevin Johnson, underrated point guard for that team as well. Mark Stoudemire had some good years with Steve Nash. Sean Marion. Hey, we can say Sean Marion hot, probably over Amari. I think Sean Marion had a much better career. Probably underrated. But let's get back to football. What do we got here on the docket? For Commissioner Corner Podcast. What episode is this?
Episode number 35. And before we jump into the show, we're going to talk about the NBL Live game that actually you and I were part of just last night. And that was the Cleveland Browns and the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers ended up coming away on top 38-27 over the Browns. And boy, did Melvin Gordon, I think he was our player of the game, did he have a heck of a night. He had 14 attempts, 131 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. There's a little bit of concern about Melvin Gordon coming into that game because he had kind of gotten out to a slow start. But last night on NBL Live was his 3rd game in a row over 100 yards. The 2K man looks live and well. How did you feel about that performance last night from the Chargers?
Absolutely a huge fan of Air Gordon. Melvin Air Gordon is what I'm calling him, MG2K. He's a guy that went for 2,000 yards last season, 2,101 to be precise, with 26 touchdowns, and he's on pace. I don't know if he's on pace to do 2,101 again, but let me tell you, his last 3 games, you said over 100, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Two over 150, and last night was over 130.
And I'm just going to say it. Let's not tease. 156, 163, 131, and he did it in 15 carries, 17 carries, and 14 carries. So it's one of those things that's very unique in the NBL. You're finding a guy that can get it done without getting a plethora of carries, meaning he's not having to get a bunch of shots. He's not a volume shooter over here. We're still going with the NBA. March Madness is here. He's an efficient scorer right here. He's an efficient yards getter, and we don't see that much at halfback. Someone who can consistently get those kind of yards, and they don't need the ball 25 to 30 times.
Yeah, it was actually late into the third quarter. He had only had 8 carries, and then, like we said, he finished with 14. He just took I think he had 100 yards on those last 4 or 5 carries, and that was just something, like you said, he doesn't need the ball a lot. He doesn't need all the attention, but whenever he gets his shots, he's making them count. And that was a big game last night because, as we talked about, that was a rematch from the AFC Championship, the Browns and the Chargers. The Browns kind of looked a little flat, little stale. They just didn't seem like they had everything, ironed out. They weren't quite buttoned up. Jameis Winston was looking at one guy for quite a while and then would just kind of run. Wasn't really.
But he always does that. We say that all the time. I mean, that's
it just
what he
didn't
does.
look good.
Well, okay. And what looked abnormal about last night?
Well,
I'm gonna push back on this a little bit because you're making excuses for them, and I see this when I play them or when I've seen them play. It's the same thing every time, and sometimes it looks better than others, and then sometimes it looks about average, and then a couple big plays happen in their favor, and then we walk away thinking Jameis Winston is this great quarterback, which right now, after I called the game yesterday, and I've watched a couple games, I'm not convinced that this guy is really that good. I wouldn't even say he's top 10 in the NBL, and I don't care what his stats say. I see a one-read quarterback who uses his legs to roll out. Good for him. But is he a franchise quarterback? No, because to be a franchise quarterback, you have to be able to sit in the pocket, make the reads, make the right throw, and I don't see him do that, and if he does, I don't see him do it enough.
Yeah, and a big concern that I had last night was their defense was nowhere to be found as the Chargers put up 38 points, but I don't know if it was a lack of ability or just a lack of just the way the game was going, but Isaiah Crowell only had 8 carries for 23 yards. They have to get him going and control the game if they want to have a productive season to win games. They're down to 3-2 now, but we'll see how that plays out. Hopefully Isaiah Crowell can stay healthy. He's known to have some injury problems, but he's really the pace setter for that team, and just last night could not get it done. But now we're going to move on. We're going to get into our topics for the night. And we are going to start off talking about the Rams quarterback. Bummer, I don't know if you've heard of this guy, but he is having a very good rookie season on a team that a lot of people say we're about a quarterback away. Maybe a quarterback, maybe a star player somewhere else, but this guy is a phenomenal talent, and he's having a good start to his NBL career. We're in week 6 right now. Currently at 8 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, a quarterback rating of 129. That's really good for a rookie quarterback, and especially with that division that's kind of, at least the 49ers are coming up. They're struggling right now, but the division's not one of the worst in the NBL right now. But Baggs is having a good start to his NBL career.
Yeah, I like A.J. Baggs. I think he struggled a couple games, but to be expected. I don't think he's hit a rookie wall, to say it at all. I want to read out his QBR so far, because when he's good, he's actually really good. And when he's bad, which we've seen him be bad one game, he actually got benched that game against the Detroit Lions. He was very bad. But, I mean, you can't expect a rookie, even if he was the #1 pick in the NBL season 30 rookie draft. You can't expect him to come out there and just perform every night, especially against elite teams. Let me give you a QBR list right now. 107 week 1, 158 week 2, 119 week 3, week 4, 145, week 5, 122. And this schedule has not been that difficult. I mean, the Titans probably the better team of the 5 I just mentioned. He played the Titans, the Bears, the Panthers, the Eagles, and the Cardinals. These are a lot of struggling teams right now. Even the Titans are not playing their best football. Even he would admit that. But triple-digit QBRs, hitting over that 100 mark, you got to feel good about A.J. Baggs. 94 throw power, 90 short, 87 medium, 85 deep. That's already better than a lot of guys in the league coming straight out of Louisville, 6'4", 228. Really impressed by A.J. Baggs early in his career. I think this guy does have superstar potential. He has the superstar development trait in Madden, but I think he has potential to really do some things. And in that division, as you said, not the best, but it's open. Seahawks aren't dominating it like they used to. I know they've won a lot recently, but I think they're more on the decline than they are on the incline. So I would say the Rams have a legitimate shot this season.
Yeah, and I think that a big help for that division too, for Bags at least, is Richard Sherman's gone. The Seahawks let him go into free agency. He was picked up by the Detroit Lions, who he just faced this week, and he actually threw 2 interceptions against those Detroit Lions.
Yeah, it was week 6.
Week 6, 2 interceptions against the Detroit Lions. They didn't put up a point. 37-0 in the Lions' favor. Apparently, Bags was benched, only going 4 for 11 before being pulled. Just not a good game from Bags, but like we said, this guy's a rookie, and he's played what I like to see from rookies and young players generally is they have to compete at a certain level against the teams that they should play good against. I don't want to see them play poorly against teams that they should play well against. So when you look at that game against the Detroit Lions, that's a good team. They have 2 great corners in their secondary. Throwing 2 interceptions it's just a bad game, but it's a game that you kind of expect to happen whenever your rookie faces a real defense for probably the first time, maybe outside of the Titans, but he still played very well against them. So I would say he's right on pace and doing very well for his career here starting in the NBL.
Yeah, well, you look at, I don't want to say benched. Actually, I take that back. He wasn't benched. It was more of a game that the lead had gotten so big that he decided that it wasn't his night and they took him out. He wasn't particularly benched. If it was a close game, I'm sure he would have stayed in. So he wasn't really pulled for that. It was just more of the game got away from him. That's what ownership had said after the game. The game kind of got away from him. You want to protect your young quarterback. He was 4 for 11. He wasn't playing well. We decided to move in and bring in another guy. I believe they brought in Simeon, so you know, that worked out like it is. But big game this week, week 7 for the Los Angeles Rams. They're taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks are at home, but Daddy Leagues estimates this score to be 21-20 in favor of the Rams, and they say that A.J. Bag's going to throw for over $170. So I'm going to be really watching this matchup to see how this develops, because this might be indicative to how the NFC West kind of plays out this season. It looks like a Rams-Seahawks matchup, but even the 49ers just got to win today. They're 2-4. They're still in that hunt, because you know that they're probably going to lose 6 to 8 games and win this division, whoever it may be.
Yeah, and right now the Rams a good 4-2 start. The Seahawks are right behind them at 3-2. But like you said, that big game tonight or this week, that's opens the door for them to get another game up on those Seahawks, who have kind of owned that division. Some weeks or some years convincingly, some not so much, but. Yeah, we've always felt like that division was pretty open. They are building their teams very nicely in the West. So it's an exciting thing to watch. We love to see these rookie quarterbacks come into the league and see what they can do. But moving on, this is a guy who is not a rookie. He is one of the biggest names in the NBL, and it is a sad topic for some, but for others, it may be a positive topic. And we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, and we're going to ask the question of whether or not it is his time to hang up the cleats in the NBL, or at least for the Packers to move on from him. This was a guy over the last 4 seasons. His quarterback rating started at 60. It crept up to just under 90. But for the last 3 seasons, we've seen it decline. And currently, right now, he is sitting at 8 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 60. That's down 26 points from last season. So, Bomber, you see this team twice a year, and even Hop could weigh in on this, as you guys are all in the same division as Aaron Rodgers. Do you think that it is a problem in their design of their offense, or do you think that Aaron Rodgers' time is finally up and the Packers need to move on, or Aaron Rodgers just needs to move on?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at his QBR right now from the last couple seasons, and I'm kind of shocked, man. I thought he had a good season last year. I'm actually kind of wrong. He was 86.9 QBR, 16 touchdowns, 17 picks. It was the season before, only 2,700 yards in NBL season 29. Season 28 is the year I was speaking of. I felt he kind of hit his peak, 4,133 yards, 66 completion percentage, both highs for the cycle, 26 touchdown, another high for the cycle. Did throw 30 picks, which was a high for the cycle, but I thought he had a pretty good season, NBL season 28 with the 4,100 yards, and that came off of 3,500 yards in NBL season 27. Felt like Aaron Rodgers was kind of starting to get his feet wet, but now he's he's aged a little bit more. Throw power down to 89. He's 37 years old. He's on the last year of his deal. He signed a 2-year extension for them worth close to $50 million. He's on the final year of that. He's making $24 million, and he is not performing. But if he does play another year, is there going to be interest for him in the free agency market? That's going to be my follow-up question to that. But this topic right here, Aaron Rodgers done. I don't know if he's done as far as his ability but he's done in Green Bay. I think he's done. I think they let him go after this year. How can they bring him back? They're 1-5 right now, unless they have a magical comeback, which I don't expect. Their schedule isn't too easy to end the season. But we're talking about a quarterback that'll be 87 throw power next season with a 96 short, 93 medium, 89 deep, 93 play action, 97 throw on the run. I still actually like Aaron Rodgers, and somebody will take him at least even on a backup role if he's willing to accept that. But I think he might even be a starter in the NBL next season.
Yeah, I think that this is the thing with the Packers. We were talking about, I think on episode 33 or 34 even, we were talking about how the Packers may be one player away. I thought one player away on the defensive side of the ball to where they would be playing for that wild card spot. And I thought that would be convincing to me. Like, I thought they were in that position, but something has just completely fallen off to where...
Well, I mean, let's look at the stats real quick. Something just caught my eye right here that I noticed earlier, but I didn't really kind of put it in place to where it really fits. Aaron Rodgers, if you want to spin this into a positive lip, if he hits the free agency market and he's not going to be a Packer, and you want to say Aaron Rodgers still has a little bit yet left in his tank, you have to think, if you can just keep Aaron Rodgers upright, he's going to be a better quarterback probably by 100%. He might double his output now, QBR of 60. He could have a QBR of 110 to 120. He's been sacked 31 times through 7 games so far. And I think they had a bye week 4, so actually through 6 games. Last year, he was sacked 37 times. Before that, 53, 67, and 43. So he's on pace right now to get his cycle high in the amount of times he's been sacked. And that's not good if you're Aaron Rodgers. That wear and tear you have on your body taking those kinds of hits, that's something that's concerning if I'm looking to pick him up in free agency, but also could be spun into a positive if he can just stay on his feet. He might be able to give you a bit more production than 8 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, and that I'm pretty sure of.
Yeah, and now that's interesting, because when I asked if it was something, a flaw in the design of the offense, I think that changes this a bit, because now I'm looking at this as maybe Rodgers still is completely physically capable, and it's just a lack of either coaching or ability on the offensive line for the Packers. The bright spot could be if the Packers believe they can fix their offensive line, they could use a tag option on Rodgers and bring him back for 1 more year. But I think if this guy hits the free agent market, there's definitely going to be a team that's going to take him no matter what. I'm not real sure what the feel on starting quarterbacks is in the league right now. It seems like a lot of teams have gotten their quarterbacks, and this draft, I think, is another heavy quarterback draft. I think there's 6 or 7 guys that could go. So I think that there's a lot of options, but the bright side is Rodgers, I think, still does have it. Like you said, they just cannot protect this guy, and that's a big question for me, because, like I said, I thought this team was one player away on defense, and now they've dropped to bottom in the NFC North at 1-5. Hop, are you with us? Do you have any input on these Packers? Do you think it's something with the offensive line? Or do you think it's purely Aaron Rodgers?
I played him twice this season already. Aaron Rodgers has made good throws when he's upright, but like you said, we've had pressure on him the entire game, both games, and their run game has really dwindled down this year, whereas last year they were running all over us. So I do think it's more of a scheme coaching issue than anything. Yeah, and that's just another thing is, like I talked about, I thought that they were 1 player away on defense. Their defense is allowing the 30th most points in the NBL at 31 points a game. They're just not. They're kind of middle of the road in passing defense. 24th in the rushing defense, almost 100 yards per game on defense. So I'm just not sure what happened to this team, and I'm so much more convinced that it is something's wrong with the team and the coaching as a whole, as compared to just Rodgers. Because I think Barr made a great point about all of the sacks that Rodgers has taken. That I think in a good offense with a lot of protection up front, this guy could definitely be a franchise quarterback for another couple of years. I have experience with 87 throw power. It's very usable, especially with those high accuracies, that I could see him go to a couple of teams if they choose not to go in the draft, and he could still be very productive. But that's going to be left up to this season. We were about halfway through. There's still a lot of time left. We're going to see how the Packers play out and see if they're able to pull it together and make a push for that wild card spot. But moving on, we're talking about a guy who's in his 2nd year, and a lot of people look at quarterbacks and in their second year, and they talk about the sophomore slump, but this guy actually had a pretty below average rookie season, but boy, he has come back on fire in his sophomore season, and there's no sophomore slump here for Brody Denton, the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. So far this season, he is at 10 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, and an incredible quarterback rating of 143. That's pretty impressive for a guy that had a 19 touchdown, 25 interception season last year. Bomber, do you think that they're finally finding their groove there in Atlanta? Because we've always talked about Atlanta could be a team that make a playoff run, but just last year they had such a poor year that we were kind of taken back because they had such a phenomenal draft last year.
Yeah, I'm looking at the receiving core right now for the Atlanta Falcons. You got Ronnie Bradford. That's the guy I absolutely love. 25 years old, 5'10", 177 from Notre Dame. And then also they have Deion Burst, another guy that is a small on the smaller side that can get it done. He was a first-round pick in NBL season. I believe it was 28 rookie draft. This is a guy that it was 29 rookie draft. Excuse me. This is a guy from Pittsburgh University. He can get it done as well. And those are the two guys leading this team. But I really want to say, I think Brody Denton's ability is really dependent on this receiver core. Can this receiver core get the yards after the catch and make it easy on the quarterback? Right now, Deion Burst is averaging 28.1 yards per catch. Ronnie Bradford, 26.8 yards per catch. Then everybody else is 10, 9 at wide receiver. Kelsey Ford's at 17.1. But when you get numbers like 28, Lip, and 26, and you're throwing passes that are 5 to 10 yards, and they're just able to extend and triple that number on the ground, that makes a lot of pressure taken off of. That takes a lot of pressure off of Brody Denton, and it really allows this offense to thrive because you're taking low risk passes and you're getting rewarded at this high clip. I think that might be the influx right now we see in Brody Denton. I'm not too sold on this guy really moving forward, and I don't think they've really played that too tough of a schedule so far. Like I said, I like Jameis Winston more than I like Brody Denton. I think they're very similar in the way that they play. To be honest, I think they're going to run the ball if they don't make their first read, but his first read so far has been getting him 28 yards per catch. I mean, that's huge, and he's got a lot of speedsters around him. But I'll take Jameis Winston over Brody Denton. I'm not too convinced, and I'm not sold on Brody Denton just yet.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Whenever these quarterbacks move teams, we put a lot of speculation on what's going to happen. And last year, with those rookie wide receivers that you mentioned, and even Ford that they got in the draft before, we thought that this Falcons team was going to be an extremely high-powered offense, and we thought their offense was really going to drive them. We already knew they had a good defender in Tack McKinley. And then they came out and they were absolutely terrible. 5-11 last year. But the big stat to me was that they were 1-5 in their division. And if you can't, you and I always talk about this. If you can't compete in your division, you've got to mix it up. You've got to figure out something because it starts with competing in your division. The Saints won the division. They were 4-2 in the division. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers were actually 5-1 in their division. They finished 6-10, but they were 5-1 in their division. The Panthers were 2-4, but the Falcons had the worst division record at 1-5. How important is it? We talk about it all the time. It's so important to be able to compete within your division. Do you think that the Falcons were maybe looking at maybe getting to the playoffs, playing the Vikings, playing the Lions, playing those teams in the playoffs? They weren't even thinking about how to compete in their own division, and that kind of took them back a little bit, and then they had to redo their offense, redo their defense, and now they're actually figuring it out this year?
That's a positive spin on it, Lip. I'm not convinced. I think the Falcons just weren't that good, and I think division games, we always say, are very tough if a team really focuses on how can they beat their division, like I think the Buccaneers have been doing. You notice they have a pretty decent division record as opposed to their record versus everybody else, and that's what you want to see. Right now, even at 4-1, the Falcons are 1-1 in their division. If they're playing their best football, they should be 2-0. The Saints also in the same kind of boat. They just don't really dominate against the rest of their division. They kind of split against each other, and then the Panthers and Buccaneers might beat them once each as well. So it's kind of head-scratching right now, but that's what you get with division games and division opponents. You get the rivalry matchups. They know your tendencies the best more than anyone. If you're trying to beat a team, you reach out to an owner in that division and say, hey man, how does this team play? What do they like to do? What do you notice in them? Yeah, I noticed this. I mean, you can get some good intel and information from other teams within that division of the team that you're playing. And I think that really holds true for the NFC South, who I believe is probably one of the most overrated divisions in the NBL right now. I think I'd say the AFC South is better than the NFC South.
Yeah, and the thing with the Falcons is that if you look at you talk about you don't think their schedule is that tough, and that's why you think Denton's having a decent season. This is big. They don't have a team. They don't play a team that has a winning record until week 13. They play the Giants, and then they play the Jets, and then they don't play another team that has a winning record. So in this back half of the season, they just are coming off their bye week. They play the Panthers this week. They have a long stretch until they play the Giants. They don't play any teams other than the Giants and the Jets who have a winning record. And like you said, with that schedule playing in their favor, I think if they are going to make it to the playoffs, if they would lose those two games, those two tougher games, and they just get smacked around, and they do make it into the playoffs because of their weaker schedule, they could get completely destroyed by some team in the NFC playoffs.
I completely agree. I'm on point for all that. What do we got next, man? I'm tired of talking about Brody Denton. I'm not sold on this guy. I don't think he's that good. I think there's other quarterbacks in the league we could be talking about other than him, especially in the NFC. There's some young quarterbacks really shining right now. We're talking Davis Webb. We're talking the Ripper. We got a lot, and I ain't talking about you, Lip. When I say the Ripper, I'm not talking about Lip the Ripper. I'm actually talking about the Vikings quarterback who is known as Jack the Ripper Gerberry. I mean, that quarterback right there, but much better. I actually think Bonham is better than Denton right now, and I think the Rams, we talked about Bags earlier, but we're talking about a lot of NFC quarterbacks right now. What do we got next? What's the next topic?
We're moving into the Crossfire segment of our show. We already have questions brought in from the chat from our producer, Hop. For the first question here, Bomber, what teams or key players need to step up in the next half of this season? I think that we look around and we see a couple teams that are kind of playing some middle-of-the-road ball that we kind of expected a little bit more of. I'm gonna go with this team just because there's so much trash talk from this owner and this team that they need to step up and they need to win 12, 14 games and they need to lock down their division. That's the Tennessee Titans, and that's owner Sonny Weaver. They talk so much about winning this division, and currently, right now the Jaguars are 5-2, the Titans are 4-2, and even the Colts are at 3-2, still in play for it. But I need to see the Titans win this division by like week 13. I don't want to see any of this week 17. They've got to win to get in or win their division stuff, because that's kind of you know, that's just. For the amount of things that they talk in the chat about the Jaguars, they need to win this division convincingly to me.
Yeah, and the player I'm going to say that needs to step up would be Marcus Mariota. You know, you said the owner. I'm saying Mariota. Mariota has had a pretty good performance against the Houston Texans and Arizona Cardinals. For whatever that's worth, you can balance that with a feather. 129 QBR, 109 QBR for Mariota, 6'4", 222. I mean, this guy can run. He's got the size. He's got the ability to throw the ball. Why is he struggling so bad? 5 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 79.9 QBR, which is sadly up from last year as you had a very disappointing season with 20 touchdowns, 37 picks. So that would be my player that needs to step up this season right now. But what's the next question?
Moving on, which team do you think will fall flat in the second half of the season? That's kind of a similar thing. I'm not sure. I think it's too early to tell because there's a couple teams that have a decent record, but it's too early to say that they'll fall flat. So I'm just kind of going to move on from that one.
I got two teams. I'm going to go Kansas City Chiefs and New York Jets. Just the Jets, really? I'm rooting for the Jets, but I do think that they fall flat because they've just fallen flat before, and that's the only way to really expect them to play out, or you get your hopes up and you get disappointed. And I think the Kansas City Chiefs, because of the same thing, they seem to fall flat when it really matters at the end of the season. So that's a team I think will fall flat. And if the Washington Redskins had a better record, I'd be choosing them as well, all based on pertinent past history. The next question is, who do you think will see more why do you think we see more small, speedy wide receivers this cycle? Probably because, I would say this, because the speed of the small wide receivers is actually a lot higher than it was last Madden. I mean, you're seeing 96, 97 speed. You don't see that as much last year. I think they were like 92, 93. So you're always going with the bigger guy. But also, teams that can actually throw the ball aren't able to pick these bigger wide receivers because they're not there by the time they draft. So the ones that you see are doing good are the smaller ones. I mean, that's my take on it so far. I mean, when you're drafting towards the end of rounds, you're not getting really the option to take the 6'4" wide receiver that can that has enough speed to get down the field and has the ability. Those are usually gone off the board.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most reasonable explanation for it. But a thing that I want to point out is the other night on Building the Franchise Detroit Lions, we saw, I think Montgomery. Does he have 96 speed on your team?
Yeah, he's 97 speed.
We saw him against Slay, who has 90 speed, I think 88 acceleration, 90 agility, and Slay was staying with him.
Yeah.
So I think that guys are stuck in the old previous Madden mindset of like speed kills and speed matters. And while it does, when you have release, route running, catching, all high in the 90s, I think that it's just they're stuck on the speed really matters. And I think when you see guys that have 96 speed but they don't have the elite athleticism or route running and catching skills, I think that those kind of older corners can keep up with them because they do have the better ability. They have the upper hand in the ability and the coverages. So that doesn't really explain why we see more of them, but I just think that everybody talks about it like it's a big deal, but I just don't think that it really matters because I have two guys that have high 90s speed, and whenever they didn't have the skills, they were getting locked down by guys that
yeah,
really
I'll tell you honestly, Montgomery is not good, and I was looking to actually replace him. You look at the Buffalo Bills; they're really big on speed receivers. It just does not work out for them. This is a team that really just relies on speed. You've seen them trade a couple speed guys. Pearson Cole is their one right now, 96 speed, 96 excel, and he's done pretty much nothing. You can look at the last 4 games, 6 catches, 74, 4 for 42, 2 for 22, 3 for 17. Tells me he's only looking for drags because you really can't trust these guys down the field. As Lip says, they're not going to hold on to balls. He actually has mid-80s catch, and he was a second-round pick. He doesn't seem too bad, but I mean, when they're 5'10", $178, they're not going to hold on to passes over the middle of the field, so you really have to get them going in the flats, and that's pretty easy to actually. I just played the Saints. He has 2 guys just like that. He has a guy, Jonell Carpenter, I believe. I would bet he has a lot of speed. Yeah, 93 speed, 93 excel. And then Tyson Woods also on that team. Guys that they're just looking to throw drags to. So 95 speed, 95 excel. It's pretty easy to kind of guard somebody when you know where they're going to go. And you know if they go over the middle, they're going to take a big hit. And they're not going to hold on to the ball unless they're one of these elite receivers. And I think that's where a lot of them run into trouble. That's why Michael Thomas has been so good for the Saints, because he's got the size and the hands, and when he gets open, he holds onto the ball.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think, especially when you're smaller, you get injured more, you drop the ball a lot more. I think that those are things that maybe people don't see because they don't see the games. They just see, maybe the stats or the attributes, so they don't really think about those other things. But moving on, Bomber, we're going to talk real quick. Super Bowl favorite. I'm actually going to go with a repeat. I think that the Giants are going to be able to make it back from the NFC, and as much as I've talked badly about them, I honestly think that this is the Browns' year. They don't look that good, and that's why I think they're going to get hot late in the playoffs. We know that they have some luck. So I'm actually going to go with the Browns from the AFC and a repeat from the NFC and the Giants. I think they're playing hot. Petway's a star. Love that guy. That would be my early Super Bowl prediction.
All right, so wait, we said Super Bowl prediction. You gave 2 teams. I'm confused here. Are we supposed to pick one?
That's who's going to play.
Oh, are we supposed to pick who's going to win the Super Bowl or who's going to the Super Bowl?
Both, man.
All right, well, the NFC, I'm not going to pick against myself, obviously. I'm not that scared. So I'm going to go Detroit Lions. I say Los Angeles Chargers, but I don't want to pick myself to win, so I'm going to take myself out. I think the Los Angeles Chargers actually win. I think it's their time. I think they should have won it last year. I think they got a little revenge. I think they actually look better passing the ball this year than they have the last 2 seasons since they brought Carson Winston. I'm going with the Chargers because I think it's just their year. Their team is really good, and pending another Joey Bosa injury, which they already have one, if he gets hurt again and a couple other guys go out, then I might change my pick. But as of right now, I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Chargers to win it all in NBL Season 30.
All right, and our final question here. Who is an early MVP? I'm going to go with my guy Le'Veon Bell. He's an absolute monster. I see some fake humble comments in the chat, so that's why I'm going with that. But no, I'm just joking. I'm going with Melvin Gordon. He's going to do it again. He is already over 600 yards in 6 games.
What are we going, MVP?
MVP. My guy's Melvin Gordon. Again, he's going to go 1,800 yards, over 20 touchdowns. Convincingly going to be an MVP to me.
I don't know. I feel like we'll be numb to it. He 1,800 yards. How much is it going to mean?
Is that bad? Is 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns?
It's something that when you see 2,100, you're going to feel like he didn't do what he did last. If he goes over 2,000 again, he gets it. I'm looking at quarterback. I see Gerberry, Stafford. Those are the only two I see right now as far as yards with a touchdown. One of them will probably win the MVP. That's going to be my bet. I actually like Le'Veon Bell, Lip. To be honest with you, if you continue to run it at the rate you've been running, if you can give him 15 to 20 carries a game, I think he's got a legit chance if he stays healthy. And that's a big if for Le'Veon Bell, who's been hurt more than Melvin Gordon, believe it or not. Georgia's not home. And that's a Seinfeld reference for those out there who watch Seinfeld. What do we have next on it? Super Bowl favorite, who was early? That's going to do it. That's it for the show. We want to close this out.
Yeah, episode 35. Once again, I'm Lip. I'm always here with Bomber, and thanks again to Hot pulling the strings behind the scenes. Make sure that you stay tuned to Bomber League and NBL Network. We're going to have NBL Live. As always, thank you once again for coming to the Commissioner Corner podcast. Have a wonderful March Madness tournament.